Good evening, friends, and welcome to another soothing journey through time with boring history for sleep. Tonight, as you settle back against your pillow, I invite you to dim your lights and allow the gentle weight of your blanket to embrace you. Perhaps you might want to adjust your position just slightly, finding that perfect spot where your neck is supported, where your shoulders can drop, and where your body can truly relax. Take a deep breath now, a slow, steady inhale, and as you exhale, let the noise and the rush of the modern world drift away. Tonight, we are leaving behind the grey skies and the busy streets. We are preparing for a gentle descent, not into fog, but into the warm golden haze of the West African savannah. We are travelling back to the 14th century to walk in the footsteps of the richest man who ever lived. A man whose vacation was so lavish, it quite literally broke the economy. If you find this calm exploration of history helps you drift peacefully into slumber, please remember to tap like and subscribe. Only if it feels right, of course, and only when you awaken refreshed tomorrow. Now let us begin our journey back in time, to the sound of the wind rustling through the acacia trees, the rhythmic soft thud of camel hooves on sand, and the shimmering heat of the Mali Empire. The year is 1324, and the world is a very different place. While Europe is grappling with damp castles and the early rumblings of the 100 Years' War, the Empire of Mali is basking in a golden age of staggering abundance. Imagine, if you will, the morning sun rising over the city of Niani. It is not the harsh, blinding white sun of noon, but a soft, apricot-colored sphere that seems to gently nudge the earth awake. Niani is the beating heart of the empire, located near the lush banks of the Sankarani River, a tributary of the Great Niger. The air here is warm, even this early in the morning. It carries a complex perfume, the scent of red earth baking in the heat, the sweet nutty aroma of shea butter being warmed for cooking, and the faint, crisp smell of wood smoke drifting from thousands of cooking fires. In the center of this sprawling city stands the royal palace. It is not a cold stone fortress, but a masterpiece of Sudanese architecture. Thick walls of sun-baked clay that keep the interior cool and dark, timber beams protruding from the facade, and intricate courtyards shaded by broad-leafed trees. It is here that we find Mansa Musa, the emperor, or Mansa, of Mali. Now, when we think of emperors, we often picture them shouting orders or leading charges. But let us picture Musa, as he likely was in these early quiet hours, a man of deep contemplation and immense administrative capacity. He is awake before the city is. He sits on a woven cushion on a terrace, perhaps sipping a warm infusion of hibiscus and mint, looking out over his domain. He is contemplating a journey, not just a weekend getaway or a diplomatic visit to a neighbor. Musa is planning the Hajj, the holy pilgrimage to Mecca. It is a journey of thousands of miles across some of the most unforgiving terrain on the planet, to the holy cities of the Arabian Peninsula. For a normal person, this would be a daunting logistical challenge. For the Emperor of Mali, it is an operation that rivals the movement of a small nation. You see, Musa cannot simply pack a bag. In the Mali Empire, the king is the sun around which the state orbits. If the sun moves, the solar system must move with it. He is calculating the numbers in his head, and the numbers are soothingly, overwhelmingly large. He is not planning to travel alone. He is planning to bring 60,000 people with him. Let that number settle in your mind for a moment. 60,000. That is the population of a decent-sized modern city. It is the capacity of a large football stadium. Imagine the logistics of that. Imagine trying to organize a family holiday for 5 people. The passports, the snacks, the arguments over who sits by the window. Now multiply that by 12,000. Musa needs to feed them. He needs to water them. He needs to clothe them. And because he is the richest man in history, he intends to do it in style. As the city of Niani truly wakes up, the sounds of preparation begin to rise like a gentle hum. It is the sound of an empire packing its bags. Down in the royal stables, grooms are brushing the coats of horses until they shine like polished copper. Mali is famous for its cavalry, and the horses are treated with reverence. You can hear the soft swish-swish of the brushes, the occasional stomp of a hoof, the comforting snort of an animal clearing its nose. But horses, while majestic, are not the engines of this journey. The true heroes of the trans-Saharan route are the camels. Thousands of camels are being gathered from the grazing lands. If you have ever stood near a camel, you know they possess a kind of prehistoric calmness. They stand with their heads held high, chewing their cud with a slow, rhythmic side-to-side motion that is incredibly relaxing to watch. They blink their long eyelashes against the dust, seemingly unimpressed by the frantic activity of the humans around them. These camels will be the freight trains of the desert, and they will be carrying a very specific type of cargo: gold. We cannot talk about Mansa Musa without talking about gold. In 1324, the Mali Empire is the source of nearly half the gold in the Old World. It sits atop the Bambouk and Boer goldfields, geological anomalies that push the precious metal toward the surface. In Mali, gold is not a rare, mythical substance hidden in dragon hoards. It is a trade good. It is a currency. It is dust. Musa has decided to bring a considerable amount of pocket money for his trip. He is packing roughly 18 tons of gold. Let us visualize 18 tons. Imagine a standard brick. Now imagine that brick made of solid, heavy gold. Now imagine thousands of them. Or picture the gold dust, packed into hollowed-out gourds and sealed with beeswax, heavy and dense. 80 camels are assigned solely to carry this gold. Each camel is laden with 300 pounds of the metal. They kneel in the dust, groaning slightly as the heavy saddlebags are strapped on, their knees calloused, their fur dusty. But it isn't just gold. The caravan needs food. The logistics of feeding 60,000 people in the desert are mind-boggling. There are herds of goats and sheep that will travel with the caravan, essentially walking pantries. There are sacks of rice, millet and sorghum. There are jars of preserved meats and dried fish from the river. There are water skins made of goat leather, thousands of them, which must be filled at every oasis. The smell of wet leather and water is a constant companion to the travelers. And then there are the textiles. Musa is a devout Muslim, but he is also a king who appreciates beauty. The caravan carries bolts of fine cotton, woven in the villages of Mali, dyed in rich indigos and earth tones. They carry Persian silks, purchased from traders who came down from the north. They carry brocades and velvets. Everyone in the procession, from the royal family down to the humblest servant, is dressed in fine Persian silk and brocade. Imagine the visual spectacle of this assembly. It is a river of color waiting to flow into the beige ocean of the desert. As the weeks of preparation turn into months, the anticipation in Niani becomes palpable. It is a slow-burning excitement. The smiths are hammering the last of the gold staffs, 500 of them, that will be carried by the royal attendants. Clang, clang, clang. The rhythmic ring of metal on metal echoes through the streets. The leather workers are stitching the last of the saddles. The cooks are grinding spices. grains of paradise, ginger, peppers, releasing sharp, piquant aromas that make your mouth water. Finally, the day of departure arrives. The sun rises just as it did on that first day of planning, casting long shadows across the assembly. The noise is a low, rumbling thunder, the sound of thousands of feet shifting, of animals lowing, of wood creaking. Musa emerges from the palace. He mounts his horse, a magnificent creature draped in blankets woven with gold thread. He does not yell a charge, he simply signals the advance. A caravan of this size does not launch, it oozes. It begins to move with the slow, unstoppable momentum of a glacier. The vanguard starts walking, and it might be hours before the rearguard even takes their first step. They move out of the green embrace of the savannah, away from the cooling waters of the Niger River. They are heading north and east. They are walking toward the Sahel, that transitional zone where the grass fades into scrub and the scrub fades into sand. The pace is leisurely. This is not a race. It is a procession. The camels walk at a steady 3 miles per hour, a hypnotic rocking gait, left legs forward, right legs forward. The humans walk beside them, their sandals slapping softly against the hard-packed earth as Niani fades into the distance, becoming a smudge of brown and green on the horizon. The reality of the journey sets in. They are a city on the move. At night, when they camp, the fires stretch as far as the eye can see, mirroring the stars in the vast, cloudless African sky. The sounds of the camp at night are a comfort. The crackle of acacia wood burning, the low murmur of thousands of conversations in Mandinka, in Arabic, in sleepy whispers, the bubbling of pots where millet porridge is being stirred, the occasional bleat of a goat. Musa sleeps in a tent that is more like a portable palace, lined with silk and carpeted with thick wool rugs to keep out the desert chill. But even he, the King of Kings, is subject to the rhythm of the road. Wake, pray, eat, walk, pray, walk, eat, sleep. It is a simple routine repeated day after day, mile after mile. The landscape changes slowly, imperceptibly. The trees become shorter, knottier. The red earth turns to beige sand. The air becomes drier, sucking the moisture from your skin, making the water from the skins taste like the sweetest nectar. They are walking into history. They are walking toward Cairo, toward Mecca, toward legend. But for now, in these early days of the journey, they are simply walking one foot in front of the other. A golden snake winding its way through the grass, heavy with wealth, heavy with purpose, moving with the slow, deep heartbeat of an empire. And as the dust settles on the road behind them, covering their tracks in a fine, powdery mist, we leave the green lands of Mali behind us. The horizon is wide and open. The journey has only just begun. If our journey began in the waking vibrancy of the riverlands, it now settles into the deep, hypnotic trance of the Sahara. We have left the green savanna behind the tall grasses, which once brushed against the stirrups of the horses, have given way to scrub, and then to gravel, and finally, to the endless rolling architecture of the dunes. You are now in the ocean of sand. It is a place of profound silence, a landscape so vast and so empty that it feels less like a geography and more like a state of mind. Imagine, for a moment, the color palette of your world shifting. Gone are the indigos and the emerald greens. In their place is every shade of gold, ochre, rust, and beige imaginable. The world has become a sepia photograph, warm and still. The caravan of Mansa Musa, this moving city of 60,000 souls, has adapted to a new rhythm. In the deep desert, you do not conquer the environment. You negotiate with it. and the primary negotiator is the sun. To survive and travel in comfort, the entire schedule of the empire has shifted. The caravan wakes not with the sun, but long before it. Picture it. It is 3 a.m. in the year 1324. The desert is freezing cold. This is something people often forget. The sand loses its heat the moment the sun drops, and the nights are crisp, requiring heavy wool blankets and close-huddled fires. The camp begins to stir in the dark. There are no trumpets blaring, just the soft rustle of fabric, the clinking of brass cooking pots, and the low groans of camels being coaxed to their feet. It is a quiet, efficient bustle. Thousands of tents are struck, collapsed, and rolled up like giant carpets. By the time the first hint of grey touches the eastern horizon, the procession is already moving. They walk in the cool of the pre-dawn, guided by the fading stars. It is the most peaceful time of day. The air is incredibly pure, scrubbed clean by the vastness. Let us talk about the logistics of walking across an ocean. The caravan stretches for miles. If you were flying high above as an eagle, you would see a long, thin thread woven through the dunes. At the front, riding on swift camels, are the Tuareg guides. These are the blue men of the desert, named for the indigo-dyed tagelmust veils that cover their faces, protecting them from the wind and sun. The dye often rubs off on their skin, leaving a ghostly blue tint. They know the sand the way a sailor knows the waves. They navigate not by landmarks, for the dunes are always shifting, erased by the wind every afternoon, but by the texture of the sand, the smell of the air, and the position of the stars. They are the GPS of the 14th century, silent and indispensable. Behind them comes the royal vanguard, carrying the gold. Remember those 80 camels? They are still there, plodding along. The gold dust in their saddlebags doesn't glitter in the dark, but its weight is a constant anchor. And then, the emperor. Mansa Musa rides in the center, protected from the sun, once it rises, by a magnificent parasol made of silk and topped with a golden falcon. He does not ride in silence. He is surrounded by the griots. The griots are the keepers of history, the living libraries of West Africa. In a culture with a rich oral tradition, the griot is more important than a hard drive. As they walk, they sing. They play the kora, a harp lute with 21 strings built from a large calabash and covered with cowskin. The sound of the kora is delicate, like falling rain. Plink, plink, plum. A sound that weaves through the dry air and settles the nerves. They sing the lineage of the kings of Mali, reciting names and deeds in a rhythmic chant that helps the marchers keep time. Left foot, right foot, listen to the song. The heat begins to rise around 10 a.m. It is not a humid, sticky heat, but a dry, baking warmth. It feels like opening the door of an oven to check on a loaf of bread, a wall of warmth that wraps around you. When the sun reaches its zenith, the caravan stops. This is the siesta of the sands. In the medieval world, nobody is foolish enough to fight the midday sun. The tents go back up. Lighter ones this time, sunshades really. Imagine lying under a canopy of striped canvas. The ground beneath you is covered with a thick, intricate rug. You are wearing loose cotton robes that catch the slightest breeze. You are safe. You are shaded. Outside, the world is baking, shimmering in a heat haze that makes the horizon look like water. But in here, it is cool shadows and rest. This is when the boring history becomes truly delicious. The food. What does an emperor eat in the middle of the Sahara? The logistics of the mobile kitchen are fascinating. They eat dried dates, sticky and sweet, packed with energy. They eat wheels of hard cheese that resist spoiling. But the staple is millet. Millet is a hardy grain, ground into flour and boiled into a porridge or a couscous. In the heat of the day, it is often mixed with sour milk or yogurt, which is cooling and tangy. They also have meat, strips of beef or mutton that have been dried in the sun until they are hard as wood, similar to jerky. This is called kilishi. It is spiced with peanuts, ginger, and chili. You chew it slowly, letting the flavors reconstitute in your mouth. It is a slow food for a slow journey. And of course, tea. The ritual of tea in the desert is sacred. It is brewed strong and dark over small charcoal fires, then sweetened with copious amounts of sugar, though honey was more common in this specific era. It is poured from a height to create a frothy foam on top. The sound of the tea pouring, splash, fizz, is one of the few sharp sounds in the soft silence of the rest period. Hydration is the obsession of the caravan. Water is carried in goat skins, which have a peculiar property. The leather is slightly porous, allowing a tiny amount of water to evaporate from the surface. This evaporation cools the remaining water inside. It is ancient thermodynamics at work. When you lift a skin to your drink, the water is surprisingly, refreshingly cool against your lips. The caravan moves from oasis to oasis. These are not just puddles with a palm tree. They are the service stations of the Sahara. Some are small, just a well and a few trees. Others, like Walata or Taghaza, are bustling hubs. Let us pause at Taghaza for a moment. This is perhaps the strangest town the caravan encounters. It is a city made of salt. I mean that literally. In Taghaza, there are no trees, no stones. The only building material is the rock salt dug from the ground. The houses are built of salt blocks. The mosque is built of salt. It is a white crystalline city that glitters under the moon, blindingly bright during the day. Here, the economic reality of the medieval world is flipped on its head. In the south, in Mali, gold is common and salt is rare. In the desert, salt is everywhere and gold is just a heavy metal. A pound of salt here is purchased for pennies, but by the time it reaches the markets of the south, it will be worth its weight in gold. Musa, being a savvy ruler, understands this. He isn't just a tourist. He is inspecting the engines of his economy. He watches the great slabs of salt being cut, 200 pounds each, ready to be loaded onto camels. It is a boring, dusty, repetitive industry that quietly keeps the entire medieval world alive. We need salt to live, to preserve food, to retain water. This grim, salty town is the refrigerator of West Africa. After the midday rest, the caravan moves again in the late afternoon as the shadows lengthen and turn purple. The colors of the desert at sunset are almost too beautiful to process. The sky turns a bruised violet, then a fiery orange, then a deep velvet indigo. Night falls rapidly. The temperature plummets. This is the time for the heavier tents, the wool cloaks, and the fires. Imagine the scene of the encampment at night. 60,000 people settling down creates a low, comforting hum. It is the sound of a city murmuring itself to sleep. There is the smell of roasting meat, the earthy scent of camel dung smoke, a surprisingly pleasant grassy smell, and the crisp, clean scent of cooling sand. The stars in the Sahara are not like the stars you see from a city. There is no light pollution here. The Milky Way is not a vague smear. It is a thick, bright band of curdled light that looks like a cloud. The stars are so bright they almost cast shadows. Lying on your back in the sand, wrapped in a wool blanket, looking up at that infinite dome, you feel small in the most comforting way possible. The problems of the world, the fluctuating price of gold, the court politics, the blisters on your feet, seem insignificant under the gaze of the expanse. Musa often walks the perimeter of the camp at night. He listens to the sounds of his people. He hears the laughter of the soldiers gambling for cowrie shells. He hears the prayers of the devout bowing toward the east. He hears the soft lullabies mothers sing to their children, songs that have traveled hundreds of miles from the riverlands. It is a peaceful existence. It is monotonous, yes. Wake, walk, rest, eat, sleep. But in that monotony, there is a profound relaxation. The mind stops racing. There are no deadlines in the desert, only the destination. You cannot hurry the sand. You can only flow with it. And so, the weeks bleed into months. The caravan becomes a self-contained world, a bubble of life floating through the void. They cross the Great Erg, the Sea of Dunes. They pass ancient rock formations that look like sleeping giants. They weather sandstorms, where the world disappears into a beige fog, and everyone simply sits, covers their heads, and waits for the wind to pass. The storm always passes. The silence always returns. As they draw closer to the northern edge of the desert, toward the lands of Egypt, the anticipation begins to shift. They are approaching civilization again, or at least a different kind of civilization. They are approaching Cairo. But that is a story for the next chapter. For now, let us linger in the quiet of the deep desert. Let us stay by the fire, watching the embers glow against the dark, listening to the wind whisper over the dunes, feeling the heavy, comfortable weight of sleep settling over the camp like a fine layer of golden dust. The camels are asleep, their long necks folded on the sand. The fires are dying down. The great silence of the Sahara embraces us all. If the desert was a study in silence and beige minimalism, the next leg of our journey is an explosion of green. After months of negotiating the ocean of sand, the horizon begins to change. It doesn't happen all at once. First, the air grows heavier, thicker with moisture. Then the birds appear, not the solitary desert hawks, but flocks of ibis and waterfowl, painting shifting patterns against the sky. And then you see it, the Nile. In 1324, the Nile is the artery of the world. To the weary eyes of the Malian travelers, accustomed to the dry heat of the Sahara, it must have looked like a miracle. It is a ribbon of dark, cool blue, flanked on either side by a lush, chaotic explosion of palm trees, papyrus reeds, and emerald fields of wheat. The caravan of Mansa Musa, 60,000 strong, flows out of the desert and settles onto the west bank of the river. But they do not just stop anywhere. They set up their camp in the shadow of the most famous structures on earth, the Great Pyramids of Giza. Let us pause and visualize this scene, because it is one of the most surreal juxtapositions in history. By the time Musa arrives, the pyramids are already ancient. They are nearly 4,000 years old. To Musa, they are as much a mystery as they are to us. But in the 14th century, they look slightly different. They are still largely covered in their smooth, white limestone casing stones, glowing softly under the Egyptian moon. Imagine the geometry of it. The sharp, triangular silhouettes of the ancient stone pyramids rising against the stars, and at their feet, thousands of smaller triangular cloth tents springing up like mushrooms. It is a city of fabric meeting a city of stone. The setup of the camp is a slow, practiced ballet. By now, the caravan is a well-oiled machine. The tents are pitched in neat rows. The cooking fires are lit, sending plumes of fragrant wood smoke drifting toward the Sphinx. The camels, relieved of their heavy burdens, kneel in the soft soil of the riverbank, chewing on the lush grass, perhaps wondering if they have died and gone to camel heaven. Musa's arrival does not go unnoticed. You cannot hide 60,000 people. Across the river lies Cairo, the metropolis of the medieval world in the 14th century. Cairo is a monster of a city, noisy, crowded, incredibly wealthy, and ruled by the Mamluk Sultan, Al-Nasir Muhammad. For the people of Cairo, looking across the river, it must have seemed as if a golden cloud had descended. The reports start trickling into the Sultan's palace. There is a king from the west. He has brought a lot of people, and he has brought a lot of luggage. The luggage, of course, is the gold. Here, we enter the phase of the journey that involves complex, high stakes, but weirdly polite bureaucracy. You see, kings do not just knock on each other's doors. There are protocols. There are layers of etiquette that act like social bubble wrap. Musa sends messengers across the river. The Mamluk officials come over to the Giza camp. They are dressed in high, stiff collars and elaborate turbans. Carrying ledgers, they encounter the Malian camp, where everything, from the tent poles to the water jugs, seems to be dusted with gold. The interaction between Musa and the Sultan is a fascinating piece of history because it is essentially a very polite, very slow standoff about manners. The custom in the Mamluk court was that anyone entering the Sultan's presence had to kiss the ground. Literally, get down on the floor and kiss the rug. Musa, however, is an emperor. He is a Mansa. He does not kiss rugs. The days leading up to the meeting are filled with gentle back and forth negotiations, whispered in cool tents over trays of sweet figs and sherbet. It is a diplomatic dance. The Mamluk viziers suggest, ever so subtly, that Musa should bow. Musa politely declines, stating he is here only for God, on his way to Mecca. Finally, the crossing happens. Musa travels across the Nile by boat. The river is wide and slow, the current tugging gently at the heavy wooden hull. He enters Cairo, not as a conqueror, but as a guest who happens to be wealthier than the host. The meeting takes place in the citadel of Cairo, a massive fortress of limestone sitting on a hill. The air is cool inside the stone halls, smelling of incense and rosewater. When Musa finally stands before the Sultan al-Nasir, the moment stretches out, the court holds its breath, and then a compromise. Musa does bow, but he announces loudly that he is bowing to God alone, not to the Sultan. Everyone relaxes. The tension dissolves. The Sultan invites him to sit beside him on the dais. They talk. They exchange pleasantries about the weather, the journey, the state of the roads. It is the boring, comforting murmur of two very powerful men, realizing they can be friends. And then the gifts begin. This is where the breaking of the economy starts. It begins with a gesture of hospitality. Musa gives the Sultan 40,000 dinars of gold, just as a thank you for having me. He gives gold to the viziers, he gives gold to the scribes, he gives gold to the people holding the doors. But he doesn't just give it away to the elite. The Malian camp is unleashed upon the markets of Cairo. Imagine the Khan el-Khalili market in the 14th century. It is a labyrinth of narrow alleys, shaded by wooden lattices that filter the sunlight into intricate geometric patterns on the ground. The air is thick with the scent of roasting nuts, cardamom, leather, and perfume. It is a sensory overload of the best kind. The soldiers, the servants, and the officials from Mali flood into these streets. And they are in a shopping mood. They want souvenirs. They want fine Egyptian linen, which is lighter and cooler than what they have at home. They want Turkish slave girls, They want singing birds in cages. They want glass lamps. They want books. And they pay for it all in gold. Now, usually, when you go to a market, you haggle. It is a respected tradition. The merchant says 10, you say 5, and you settle on 7. But the Malians do not haggle. They have so much gold dust that the concept of too expensive doesn't really exist for them. A merchant offers a bolt of blue silk for a standard price. The Malian buyer simply hands over a handful of gold dust that is worth 5 times the asking price and walks away. At first, the merchants of Cairo are ecstatic. It is the greatest sales day in the history of retail. They are clearing out their inventory. The tailors are working overtime. The spice merchants are emptying their jars. The economy of Cairo heats up like a kettle on a stove. But there is a quiet, creeping problem. This is the boring economic principle of inflation, playing out in real time. Gold is a currency because it is rare. If you suddenly dump tons of it, literal tons, into a city, it stops being rare. It becomes common. As Musa's caravan spends weeks in Cairo, enjoying the baths, the food, and the soft beds, the value of gold begins to drop. It starts slowly. A loaf of bread that cost a copper coin yesterday now costs a silver one. A new robe that cost a gold dinar now costs 2. The merchants realize that everyone has gold now. The exclusivity is gone. The market is flooded. Musa, in his generosity, is drowning the city in wealth. He is the guest who brings so much wine to the dinner party that he accidentally floods the host's cellar. But for the average person in the caravan, these economic theories are far away. For them, Cairo is a dream. After the harshness of the desert, they are sleeping on soft cotton mattresses. They are eating fresh fish from the Nile, grilled over charcoal with lemon and garlic. They are drinking cool water flavored with crushed flower petals. Musa spends his days in theological discussions with the scholars of Al-Azhar University, one of the oldest universities in the world. He is buying books, hundreds of them, to take back to Mali. He is hiring architects, poets, and jurists, offering them contracts to come work in Timbuktu. He is essentially headhunting the best minds of the medieval world, offering them salaries paid in heavy gold bars. The weeks pass in a golden haze of luxury and commerce. The camp at the pyramids becomes a market in itself, a temporary city where cultures mix, languages blend, and wealth flows like the river water. Eventually, though, the season turns. The pilgrimage must continue. Mecca is still far to the east. The time comes to pack up the tents. The departure from Cairo is just as spectacular as the arrival. The caravan is reassembled, but now it is heavier. They have eaten well. They have bought new clothes. The camels are carrying crates of books and glassware instead of just gold dust. They leave behind a city that is dazed, happy, and completely economically broken. It will take 12 years for the price of gold in Egypt to recover to its pre-Musa levels. He has single-handedly devalued the currency of the entire Middle East just by buying souvenirs. But as they march out of the city, heading toward the Red Sea, they are not thinking about inflation. They are thinking about the next horizon. The Nile fades behind them. The greenery gives way to the rocky red mountains of the Sinai. The air grows dry again. The soft thud of hooves returns. The song of the griot starts up once more. The golden lion is on the move again, leaving a trail of bewildered, rich, and inflationary chaos in his wake. We leave behind the noise and the glittering chaos of Cairo. The caravan, somewhat lighter in gold but heavier in books and brocades, turns its face toward the east. We are crossing the Sinai Peninsula now. a landscape of jagged red mountains that look like petrified flames against the blue sky. It is a harsh, dramatic land, but there is a beauty in its severity. Crossing the Red Sea is not a singular dramatic event, but a slow ferrying of thousands of souls. And once on the other side, in the lands of Arabia, the atmosphere shifts again. We are entering the Hejaz, the Holy Land. The air here feels ancient, heavy with history and heat. As the caravan approaches the sacred boundaries, a profound transformation takes place. Not in the landscape, but in the people. For months, this procession has been a parade of unprecedented opulence. It has been a riot of Persian silks, velvet robes, and golden staffs. But as they near the holy city of Mecca, all of that must go. This is the ritual of Ihram. It is a logistical equalizer that is strangely comforting to think about. Imagine Mansa Musa, the man who broke the economy of Egypt, stepping into a simple tent. He takes off the heavy, embroidered robes. He removes the golden jewelry he sets aside the crown. He bathes in cool water, scrubbing away the dust of the road. When he emerges, he is dressed exactly like the humblest camel driver in his caravan. He wears two simple pieces of unstitched white cotton cloth, one wrapped around the waist, one draped over the shoulder. No seams, no pockets, no status. Ideally, everyone in the caravan does this. Suddenly, the sea of color, the indigos and saffrons, turns into a sea of white. It is a visual quieting. Looking out over the procession now, you do not see kings and servants. You see a unified river of white flowing through the beige valleys. They move toward Mecca. The chanting begins here. It is the talbiyah, a prayer recited by pilgrims. Labbaik, Allahumma labbaik. Here I am, O God, here I am. It is a soft, rhythmic mantra. Imagine thousands of voices murmuring this, not as a shout, but as a low, vibrating hum that seems to emanate from the rocks themselves. It is a sound that settles the heartbeat. Here I am, here I am. They arrive in the valley of Mecca. In the 14th century, the city is a cluster of stone houses nestled in a bowl of dry, stark mountains. In the center lies the Haram, the sanctuary. Entering the courtyard is an experience of sudden, expansive geometry. The ground is paved with smooth, cool marble that feels soothing against bare feet, and in the center, anchoring the entire world, is the Kaaba, the cube, draped in black silk embroidered with gold calligraphy. It stands in stark, stunning contrast to the white marble and the white-clad pilgrims. It is a void, a center of gravity. Musa, the king of gold, joins the crowd. Here, the boring history becomes a hypnotic physical act. The ritual of tawaf involves circling the Kaaba 7 times, counterclockwise. Let us visualize this from above. It is a giant, slow-moving whirlpool of white cloth circling a black center. The movement is fluid. There is no rushing. You simply step into the current and let it carry you, round and round. 1, 2, 3. The sound is just the shuffling of bare feet on stone and the soft murmur of prayer. It is arguably the most peaceful crowd on earth. There is no pushing in this space. The emperor is just a man. He is pressed shoulder to shoulder with merchants from Damascus, farmers from Yemen, and sailors from Zanzibar. The boundaries of the map dissolve. The sensory details of the sanctuary are distinct. The smell of oud and musk incense drifts through the air, heavy and sweet. The taste of Zamzam water, drawn from the ancient well, is slightly salty, mineral-rich, and incredibly refreshing after the dry heat. After the circling, there is the walking, the sari, walking back and forth 7 times between the hills of Safa and Marwa. Again, the number 7, again, the repetition. walking, thinking, praying. It is a ritual that forces you to slow down. You cannot speedrun a pilgrimage. You must submit to the pace of the ritual. Musa spends days here. We know little of his internal thoughts, but we can imagine the relief. For a man carrying the weight of an empire, the weight of 60,000 lives, and the weight of all that gold, this simplicity must have felt like a cool cloth placed on a fevered forehead. At night, the air in the valley cools down. The marble floor releases the heat of the day. The pilgrims sit in the courtyard, looking at the Kaaba under the moonlight. It is a time of quiet reflection. The stars above Mecca look the same as the stars above Niani, connecting the journey home to the journey here. But the pilgrimage is not just Mecca. There is the journey to Medina, the city of light, to visit the tomb of the Prophet. Medina is softer, greener. It is an oasis. The mosque there is filled with pillars of forest of stone. Musa meets with scholars here too, but the tone is different from Cairo. In Cairo, it was about commerce and exchange. Here, it is about legacy. He is thinking about what he will bring back to Mali. Not goods, but knowledge. He recruits jurists who know the law. He recruits descendants of the Prophet to bless his city. He meets a man named Abu Ishaq al-Sahili. This is a crucial meeting. Al-Sahili is a poet and an architect from Andalusia in southern Spain. He is a man of refinement. Used to the tiled courtyards of Granada, Musa convinces him to come back to Mali. "Come with me," he says, "and I will let you build." This conversation, held perhaps over a quiet dinner of dates and milk in the cool Medina evening, will change the face of West African architecture forever. It is the moment the famous Jingueraba Mosque of Timbuktu is conceived, born in a quiet conversation between a king and a poet in the Arabian desert. Eventually, the rituals are complete. The hair is trimmed. The white robes are folded away. The silk returns. The identity of the emperor is put back on like a heavy coat. The return journey begins, but the mood has changed. The caravan is lighter. They have accomplished the goal. The spiritual battery has been recharged. However, the physical reality is starting to set in. They have been walking for over a year. The camels are tired. The people are tired. And perhaps most worryingly, the gold is running low. Musa was so generous in Cairo, so lavish in the holy cities, that the saddlebags are feeling significantly lighter. The 18 tons have been distributed to the world. As they turn back toward the west, facing the long road home, the desert seems to stretch out a little further than before. The excitement of the outbound journey is replaced by the endurance of the return, but that is a worry for tomorrow. For now, let us leave them in the glow of the holy city. Imagine the caravan slowly filing out of the valley, looking back one last time at the black cube, carrying with them the silence of the sanctuary. They move back into the open sands, guided by the moon, their hearts full, their purses lightening, walking steadily toward the setting sun. We are now on the long road home, exploring the gentle irony of the world's richest man running out of cash, and the soothing, slow conversations about mud and architecture that shaped a continent. There is a specific feeling that comes at the end of a long vacation. You know the one. It is a mix of deep satisfaction, profound exhaustion, and the sudden, sobering realization that you have spent a little too much money at the gift shop. For Mansa Musa and his caravan of 60,000, the return journey from Mecca is the ultimate version of this feeling. They turn their backs on the east and face the setting sun. They have walked across the world. They have circled the Kaaba. and they have changed the economic landscape of the Mediterranean. But now they have to walk all the way back. The route home is not merely a rewind of the journey out. The energy is different. The caravan is quieter. The nervous excitement of the departure has been replaced by the heavy, rhythmic endurance of the veteran traveler. The camels know the way now. Their feet find the hard-packed paths between the dunes with a kind of muscle memory. But there is a slight problem, a logistical hiccup in the Golden Plan. Mansa Musa, the King of Gold, the Lion of Mali, has effectively run out of money. It seems impossible, doesn't it? But remember the 18 tons. Remember the handfuls of gold dust given to door openers in Cairo. Remember the souvenir shopping. It turns out that when you spend money like water in the desert, eventually the well runs dry. The journey back through Egypt becomes a lesson in the boring reality of finance. The currency of the caravan has shifted. They are no longer carrying gold. They are carrying debt. In a twist of irony that surely must have made Musa smile wearily in his tent, the man who devalued gold in Cairo now has to borrow it back. And because he devalued it, the lenders in Cairo are charging him exorbitant interest rates. It is a bureaucratic loop of his own making. He borrows from merchants who accompany the caravan. He signs promissory notes. Imagine the scene. The emperor sitting by a fire, the light flickering on his face, calmly signing a piece of parchment that promises to repay a fortune in gold once they reach the Bamako goldfields. It is high-stakes accounting done with the slow scratching of a reed pen. But the lack of gold actually makes the caravan lighter. And in the place of metal, they are carrying something far more valuable. Though perhaps less shiny, they are carrying people. This is where we get to know the most important souvenir of the trip. Abu Ishaq al-Sahili. Al-Sahili is the poet-architect from Andalusia. Picture him. He is a man used to the cool, tiled fountains of Granada. He is used to stone arches and green gardens. Now, he's riding a camel in the middle of the Sahara, squinting against the sun, watching the endless beige horizon. He is a fish out of water, but he is a fascinated fish. He rides alongside Musa, and they talk. These conversations are the seeds of a golden age. They don't talk about war or politics. They talk about buildings. They talk about mud. In my country, Al-Sahili might say, gesturing with a sun-darkened hand, we build with stone. We cut the earth. In my country, Musa replies, the earth is the building. We need it to breathe. They are discussing the heat. You see, in the Sahel, you cannot just build a stone box. It would turn into an oven. You need architecture that lives. They discuss the properties of banko, a mixture of mud, rice husks, and shea butter. It is a soothing, technical conversation that lasts for hundreds of miles. Al-Sahili begins to sketch in his mind. He imagines a mosque that looks like an anthill or a termite mound, organic, rising from the ground, with thick walls to insulate against the noon sun, and timber beams sticking out to allow workers to climb up and replaster it after the rains. He is dreaming up the Sudano-Sahelian style. He's inventing the skyline of Timbuktu while rocking back and forth on a camel saddle. The journey is hard. History tells us that the return trip was fraught with challenges. The weather turns. The heat is merciless. Camels die, people are lost to the exhaustion of the road. But let us view this not through the lens of tragedy, but through the lens of resilience. The caravan stretches out. It becomes a thin line of will. They move at night to avoid the worst of the sun. The silence of the march is profound. It is the silence of 60,000 people focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. Step, breath, step, breath. They are shedding the excess. The silk robes are dusty and torn. The fine leather sandals are worn thin. They are being pared down to their essentials. The luxury of the outbound trip is gone, replaced by the stark beauty of survival. And then, finally, the air changes. It happens slowly. The dryness in the back of the throat eases. The smell of dust is replaced by the smell of something wet and green, the smell of the Niger River. They reach the city of Gao. It is the eastern gateway to the empire. The arrival in Gao is not the fanfare of the departure from Niani. It is a stumbling, grateful collapse into the arms of home. The people of Gao come out to meet them. They bring water. They bring fresh fruit, mangoes and melons that explode with juice in dry mouths. For Musa, stepping off his camel in Gao must have been the greatest relief of his life. He is back on his own soil. The red earth of Mali is under his feet. He has returned with debt, yes. He has returned with fewer people than he left with. But he has returned with Al-Sahili. He has returned with the plans for the Jingwareba Mosque. He has returned with crates of books that will form the library of Sankore University. He left with gold, which is heavy and useless in the desert. He returns with knowledge, which is weightless and infinite. As the caravan settles into Gao for a long, long rest, the sun sets over the Niger River. The water turns a deep molten purple. The fishermen are casting their nets, just as they were when we started. The rhythm of the river has not changed, but the empire has. The Golden Age has officially begun, and it begins not with a trumpet blast, but with the soft sound of a tired emperor sitting down on a cushion, closing his eyes, and finally, sleeping in his own bed. But the journey isn't quite over. There is one last leg, the homecoming to Niani and the legacy of the mud builders. Here is the final chapter of our journey. We have walked thousands of miles, spent a fortune, and now, finally, we come to rest in the warm embrace of home and history. We are almost home. Can you feel the difference in the ground beneath our feet? We have left the shifting, treacherous sands of the deep desert. We have left the sharp, rocky trails of the Sinai. We are back on the red, iron-rich earth of the savannah. It is solid. It is warm. It is the ground of Mali. The return of Mansa Musa to his capital isn't just the end of a road trip. It is the planting of a seed. He left as a king of gold. He returns as a king of dust. But this dust is magical. The caravan, now much leaner, winds its way to Timbuktu and then down to Niani. The excitement of the crowds has softened into a respectful welcome. The people see that their emperor has changed. He is older. His skin is weathered by the Arabian sun. He carries the quiet, faraway look of a man who has circled the Kaaba and seen the edges of the world. But he does not rest immediately. He has one last great task. He turns to his friend, the Andalusian poet-architect, Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, and he says, "Build." And so, the great construction begins. This is the birth of the architecture that will define West Africa for centuries. It is a process so organic, so tactile, that just thinking about it feels grounding. Al-Sahili looks at the materials available. There is no marble here. There is no limestone quarry. There is only earth, water, and wood. So he embraces the mud. They begin to build the Jingwareba Mosque in Timbuktu. Imagine the construction site. It is not loud with the clanging of metal cranes. It is soft. It is the sound of hundreds of hands patting wet earth. Pat, pat, smooth. They mix the clay with straw and shea butter to make it waterproof. They form bricks and bake them in the sun. Until they are warm and hard, they stack them layer by layer, creating walls that are thick and rounded. There are no sharp edges here. Everything is curved, eroded by design, mimicking the termite mounds that rise from the savannah. Al-Sahali adds a brilliant innovation. The toron. These are bundles of palm wood sticks that stick out of the walls like spikes. They look decorative, casting long, rhythmic shadows in the afternoon sun. But they are actually permanent scaffolding. They allow workers to climb up the walls every year after the rainy season to apply a fresh layer of plaster. It is a building that requires care. It is a building that needs to be hugged by its community to survive. As the mosque rises, so does the new economy. The gold that Musa spent so lavishly in Cairo is gone, dispersed into the Mediterranean. But in its place, a new currency flows into Timbuktu. Books. Scholars from Cairo, from Fez, from Mecca, they followed Musa home. They settle in the cool mud brick houses. They set up libraries. The Sankore Madrasa becomes a beacon. Imagine walking through Timbuktu in this new golden age. It is quiet. The streets are sandy and hushed. The loudest sound is the scratching of reed pens on paper and the murmuring of students memorizing texts. Salt comes down from the north. Gold comes up from the south. And knowledge sits in the middle. The city becomes a university. It is said that in Timbuktu, the ink of the scholar is worth more than the blood of the martyr. It is certainly worth more than the gold dust that started this whole adventure. And what of Musa? The Lion of Mali settles back into his life. The debts in Cairo are eventually paid off. The empire is, after all, still sitting on the goldfields. The economy stabilizes. The inflation he caused in Egypt becomes a legend, a story old men tell their grandchildren in the markets of Alexandria. I remember the year the Golden King came, and a loaf of bread cost a fortune. Musa grows old in Niani. He returns to his terrace overlooking the Sankarani River. Picture him there, in the twilight of his life. The sun is setting, casting that same soft apricot light we saw in Chapter 1. The circle is complete. He holds a cup of tea, warming his hands. He thinks of the desert. He remembers the silence of the dunes. He remembers the cool marble of Mecca. He remembers the look on the Sultan's face when he handed over the gold. He realizes that the journey wasn't about the destination. It wasn't even about the Hajj. It was about showing the world that Mali existed, and he did it. He put his home on the map, literally. Because of his trip, European map makers began drawing a king holding a gold nugget deep in the heart of Africa. But sitting there, watching the river flow, Musa knows the truth. The gold was just the ticket price. The real treasure is the peace of the river. The real treasure is the call to prayer, drifting from the mud mosque he built. The real treasure is the sleep that comes after a long, long day's work. The empire is at peace. The camels are grazing. The books are being read. The sun dips below the horizon. The crickets begin their evening chorus, a gentle, rhythmic chirping that sounds like the heartbeat of the earth. The air cools down. Musa closes his eyes. He is not the richest man in the world anymore. He is just a man, safe in his home, drifting on the current of memory. And as the night wraps its dark velvet blanket around the empire of Mali, the golden lion finally sleeps. The story is written, the history is set, and the silence of the Sahara waits, patient and eternal, for the next traveler. And so, friends, we leave Mansa Musa there, resting in the history books and the warm sands of time. May these memories of golden dunes, cool rivers, and quiet courtyards guide you into your own peaceful dreams. The journey is over. You are safe, you are home. If you drifted off during our walk across the desert, let me know in the comments below. Or better yet, just stay asleep. Sweet dreams. Good night.